The Biden administration is working to secure a ceasefire deal and a hostage deal in the Middle East. Israelis protested in the streets for the third day in a row to put pressure on their government to do the same. White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby joins us now. It's great to see you. Thanks for being here. I want to get to the Middle East in just a moment. But first, I do want to ask you about this school shooting in Georgia, this tragic event today. What is the president doing to address this?
Well, as you know, the president has been monitoring this very much all day. His team has kept him completely apprised and informed. I think you also heard the Attorney General make clear today that FBI and other federal law enforcement authorities, as appropriate, are on the ground and providing whatever assistance they can to the ongoing investigation. We, of course, all of us here at the White House are just devastated by this terrible, terrible news. And the idea that these high school kids just going to school, just starting up after summer, could have this kind of violence visited on them by apparently one of their students is just so shocking and so terrible, so sad. And our hearts and prayers go out to all the families affected by this, as well as the students who, even if they may not have been hurt, but believe me, they're hurting and they're feeling it. And we want them to know that we're feeling with them, and we're going to continue to do what we can to support.
Yeah, our hearts go out to them, too. Thank you for that. I do want to turn now to the war in Gaza. And I mentioned those protests that have been happening against the Israeli government. How do you see this? I mean, is this putting any sort of pressure on Israel to make a deal more likely?
Well, I think I would refer to Prime Minister Netanyahu to speak to his intentions in terms of trying to move forward. I will say, however, that Israel was a full participant in the discussions last week in Doha and in Cairo. This was an Israeli proposal that originally started this whole round of negotiations back in May. It was an Israeli proposal. So we're acting in complete concert with our Israeli counterparts and our other counterparts in the region to try to get this over the finish line. What it requires in the end, when you get to the end like this, and you're really negotiating over implementing details, that's when it gets hard. That's when the horse trading really has to start in earnest. That's when the details are being fleshed out. And that's where we are right now. So, as the president has said, in order to get this over the finish line, we need leadership. We need leadership in the region. Certainly, we, the United States, are going to continue to be an active mediator here. But we also need leaders to be able to compromise, to come down to the final details here and ink the final agreements. That's where we are, and obviously we're not giving up on the effort.
Yeah, and you said this is where you are at the end. I mean, how close is the end?
We believe we're very close. We believe that the gaps that are remaining are really all about how the deal gets implemented, not the deal itself. The essential framework of the proposal has been agreed to. What we're negotiating over or how those basic details are going to actually get implemented and organized and carried through. So we're very, very close. And we do believe that a positive outcome here can be achieved, that we can get this deal. But we've been here before, too. We felt we were really close in the past few months and weren't able to close it. So we're also pragmatic about this. And all I can tell you is that we're going to keep at the work, that nobody's going to be able to say that the United States, President Biden in particular, hasn't put an awful lot of energy, every ounce of it that we can, and leadership to get this done.
And you mentioned partners in the Middle East. President Biden said recently that he believes that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should be doing more. Does the administration believe that he is an obstacle to peace?
The Prime Minister can speak to his own prerogatives here, as I said earlier. The main obstacle to peace here, let there be no mistake, is Hamas. I mean, just over the weekend, slaughtering, a half a dozen of their hostages as the IDF approached that location. That tells you the evil that we're all up against. So the main obstacle is Mr. Sinwar and Hamas. There was a ceasefire in place on the 6th of October. On the 7th of October, he decided to declare war on Israel. But as I said earlier, we want all sides to come together in earnest to get this over the finish line. That requires leadership. That requires some compromise.
Yeah, and I'm curious, too, what you think of the Department of Justice charging Hamas leaders in connection with the October 7th attacks. Does this at all have any impact on the White House's attempt to get a deal done here?
I don't think that's going to have any impact on the actual deal negotiating itself. I mean, these were charges that actually date back to the 7th of October attack. As you said, they were just recently unsealed. It does show how seriously we take what Hamas did and our obligations to hold terrorists accountable for what they've done. But the mediators of Qatar and Egypt that are dealing with Hamas, they assure us that they can continue to have those conversations. And so that's where we are.
And I want to quickly move over to another regional conflict, as it's been called. The administration is accusing Russia of engaging in interference, campaign interference leading up to the 2024 presidential election. What exactly does this interference look like from what you can tell? And how does it compare to previous election years? And is there a specific campaign that has been the target?
It's much more sophisticated than what we've seen out of the Russians in the recent past, certainly than what we saw in 2016. Yes, they're using social media, but they're much more pervasive at it. They're creating false persona, using artificial intelligence to help drive content and distribute content. And they're much more resourced and organized, using RT, what was formerly just a propaganda organ for the Kremlin, now has turned into a full covert influence activity with full funding to do this kind of work by funneling resources and organizing editorial content in actual media outlets. In one case, a media company here in the United States. So it's a bigger effort. It's certainly more sophisticated and better resourced. Look, on what their preferred candidate is, I'm just going to go so far as to say what the Attorney General said today. We know they're taking these activities to promulgate Russian propaganda, to try to push their policies and items that are of interest to them, to undermine confidence in Ukraine and what Ukraine's trying to do to defend itself, and to undermine our own democracy. That's what we're seeing, and that's what we spoke to today.